Hello, everyone. I'm back with my panelist for the first panel discussion of the day two. So it's more of CSR and philanthropy that is driving social innovation and impact at scale. I have with me different speakers. So it's Arielle Molino, who's the associate vice president at Intellecap. We have Ashish Kumar, who is climate and innovation lead at Shell Foundation. We have Janice, who is the managing director at the Ivhu Advisors, and we have Heidi Ober, who is the principal consultant at TetraTech. And the session will be moderated by Ajay Ramasubramaniam, who is the founder and CEO at Startup Rezo. And over to you, Ajay, for the further go.
Great. Thank you, Jagrati, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I just see a message from. Sorry. So, yeah, after yesterday, where we spoke about a lot of corporations, P&L, and other things, driving innovation, driving startup engagements, I think it's fairly important to talk about the role of CSR and corporate philanthropy in driving social innovation and impact at scale. And I think we have a fairly diverse panel out here. Someone like the Shell Foundation, who's been working closely with impact entrepreneurs across the global South-South, not only through grant mechanisms but also doing equity and debt investments. We have someone like Heidi, TetraTech, which is doing a lot of monitoring, evaluation, and bunch of other things. We have Janice, who is a venture investor, and we have Arielle, and who doesn't know the work that Sankalp does in emerging economies, or Intellecap does in emerging economies. So, welcome everyone. Before we dive into the questions, it would be great if we can have each one of you very briefly talk about the work that you do at your organization. Maybe we can begin with you, Heidi.
Hi, great. Thanks, Ajay. So my name is Heidi Ober. I'm a principal consultant at TetraTech. And today, specifically, I'm going to talk about the Spring program. I lead on evaluation for this particular program. And it was a business accelerator program with developmental goals. So the idea was that it would reach adolescent girls. And in the end, it did reach 2 million. So I'm going to use that as the example today to speak through. Thanks.
Arielle?
Hey, thanks, Ajay. My name is Arielle. I'm joining you today from Nairobi, Kenya. Thanks again for having me and inviting me. So I lead the Sankalp Forum for Africa. Sankalp is one of the largest convenings in the region for impact investors, entrepreneurship, and sustainable development. So that's what I do most of the time. More broadly, Intellecap is an advisory and consulting firm for the impact and entrepreneurship space. We do a lot of capacity building, directly supporting entrepreneurs, a lot of research and landscape studies to really build the ecosystem for sustainable development through entrepreneurship. So thanks again.
Awesome. Janice, if we can have you talk about the work you do.
Thanks, AJ. So my name is Janice Sambaza, based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I've been doing a lot of work in Southern Africa around impact investing as well as offering business development services to SMMEs. What's particularly interesting is how I've seen SMEs using is CSR, and I don't think they even know that it's what they're doing is impact work. So I'm going to share a lot of examples around how even smaller companies can play a role towards social innovation.
Great. And to wrap it up, Ashish.
Yeah, hello everyone. Hi Ajay. Thanks for this opportunity. So just as a brief intro, I am the overall lead for climate finance and innovation here at Shell Foundation. And in this role, what I try to do is look after, how to bring together the communities of energy transition on one side to, energy access, which is one of our key, focus sectors or subsectors. And within that sort of mandate, I'm looking at both deals and transactions on what sort of new financial intermediaries we can support, while at the same time creating new partnerships for our potential co-funding and other opportunities. And today I can give an idea of the breadth of work we do within the foundation across deploying different types of catalytic instruments. And we do less of equity, just what Anu mentioned. We do more of grant and guarantees and credit enhancements and first loss. So how that is sort of distinct, and also to mention that Shell Foundation is a independent UK registered charity. We were set up by Shell Corporate a couple of decades ago, but we operate independently at a sort of arm's length distance. So we are not like the CSR arm of Shell Corporate.
Great. So I'll dive straight in and go to the first question, which is more to do with the importance of preparation. How do you define being prepared with having a philanthropy and a CSR strategy even before a deal flow is generated? And Ashish, I'll begin with you because you concluded with saying Shell Foundation being registered as an independent charity, couple of decades. So there's a lot of insights that could potentially come from what you guys have been doing. So what's the importance of preparation in this whole area?
I think at the outset, it's crucial to have a very defined, mandate and line of separation. How we call ourselves like a venture philanthropic entity. So, like, what are the sort of broad level impact goals, and how tied or not untied they are to like the broader business goals of the corporate. So there are a number of other foundations who are at different degrees of separation with the main corporate or main business. And at the outset, it's very crucial to define in what ways it can or it should not benefit the main business. The other aspect which I have seen quite relevant is to consider in terms of design considerations, you can say, is how to best leverage the capabilities that a corporate has, other than potential material or monetary sort of involvement in terms of either grant or investments as a part of foundation, but also the business capabilities that could be leveraged. So a number of foundations you may have seen, they bring their in-kind expertise along with any of the offering they have for the impact propositions. So within that, it's crucial to have that built in. And I think uh, one thing we have realized over the last couple of decades of work is the growing area of market-based solutions. So a lot of foundations still operate with the thinking of doing some sort of interventions in both non-profit or for-profit approaches. Both are needed. It's not like one is should be prioritized over the other, but it's just choosing what sort of approaches that the foundation can adopt and best sort of serve. So it's like often we have seen like at the outset, um, you know the focus areas and the mechanisms that are being used are quite spread out. And if you don't build capabilities in one or two areas of be it sort of deploying catalytic capital through pure market-based solutions, or choosing that there are some sectors which need quite a bit of pure grant capital for non-profit approaches. So it's just choosing what sort of approaches are, what sort of developmental, focus areas that you want to have, and then what sort of mechanisms that you want to deploy, because we all, like, any organism can't do everything.
Cool. I'll come to you, Janice, on my next question. As someone at Ivhu Advisors working with different kinds of partners, what do you see as the role of CSR and philanthropy in driving social innovation and impact, but considering or bringing in scale as well?
Thank you for that, AJ. So, if you're going to be talking about social innovation, you have to use the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a framework, because it is all encompassing, and using that as a framework then at least ensures you're hitting on the main areas of need within the society. And when you look at the current funding gap, the UN estimated 6 years ago when this was commissioned, that we would need between 5 trillion and 7 trillion US dollars per year in order to address the social challenges that we have in the world. And when you look at developing countries, of that, 4.5 billion is expected to be allocated. Now, when you look at his history, previously we have looked at the public or public sources of funding to address social needs, or we've looked at non-governmental organization. But it has increasingly been very obvious that this is not enough in order to bridge the gap that we need to address the social challenges, and hence the need to now look at private sector to play a role. So when you look at CSR, it is not just a matter of signing a check after you have your profits at the end of the year and you sponsor a football team, but it is a matter of actually embedding actual structures within your objectives as a business or within your processes. And I usually like to look at the triple bottom line as a matter of explaining this, because you have profit, people, and planet. And if you use a three-legged pot as an illustration, and all of those representing a leg of the pot, you can't have one leg that's shorter than the other. So it's very imperative for private institutions to play a role. It's all hands on deck in order to institute those key social areas that are impacting the areas that they're trading in addressing the social challenges through social innovation within their businesses.
No, that's a very fair point to make. And just a couple of days back, we're chatting with a couple of DFIs here in Tanzania, where we are dialing into the conference from, and they made the same point, where CSR money is from point of view of, and this also kind of connects to one of the questions I'm going to come up to the panel with today. It's about spending money on events and sponsoring sports and whatnot, but yeah, trying to kind of figure out ways in which it can be put to better use in terms of driving innovation at scale, but keeping impact at the core of it. That point kind of gets missed out at times. I'll come to you, Arielle, with the same question, with the work that you have been doing at Intellecap, driving Sankalp in this part of the world for 10, 11 years now, and the different stakeholders that you are able to kind of bring together. What do you see as the role of CSR and philanthropy, and the kind of dialogues that you're seeing build up over the years at your forum? How is it kind of being perceived and taken up from a standpoint of driving innovation and impact at scale in Africa?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ajay. And yeah, this is a very sort of hot topic that keeps, I think, coming up, especially through our convenings. And I think what really is at the crux of the matter is that philanthropic and CSR money, have more flexibility in terms of how they can spend it. I think sometimes people forget that investors, even impact investors, they have limited partners, they have their LPs, their GPs, they're managing other people's monies, and that in effect means that they have less risk opportunity to take in terms of what their outputs are. And we don't necessarily see that with the philanthropic and the CSR type of fund. So to me, I really see that money, and I think it's becoming recognized more often now than not, that philanthropic and CSR money can really be catalytic. And I think someone already sort of touched on this. And I think that's really important to embrace. And what I've seen through the years at Sankalp is they're sort of camps, right? It's not as collaborative a community as we would like to see between the philanthropists on this side and the commercial investors on this side. And that's really unfortunate. I think it's beginning to change, which I think there's good indication that there's more effort to collaborate and more along the spectrum, from purely philanthropic to purely commercial. But sort of establishing that funnel, right? If we're talking about innovation, if we're talking about entrepreneurship, and the role of CSR to catalyze that and to put their money where commercial investors can't, because it's not because they won't, it's because their structures don't enable them to do so, right? It's we can't blame them for that. They have their own role, and CSR and philanthropic institutions have their own role. So I think the more we have these conversations about where is that nexus, how does this camp meet the other camp, and how do we actually make that money catalytic in a way that's not just dropping money on an entrepreneur or an innovation, but that's really supporting strategically. And I really appreciate what Ashish was saying about strategy and having a clear strategy. And I think that's really important for philanthropic funds to really play to their strengths, right? And what can they do well that's really driving this innovation within the structures that they have. So I'll stop there. I could go on all day.
You and prior to you, Janice both made the point on being catalytic, whereas segueing it into my next question, which is more to do with philanthropy and CSR, a lot of times being misinterpreted as money being given away. Whereas the point gets missed out that it can create not only social good at scale, but also probably to the point that even which Ashish was making, addressing some of the most pressing problems where commercial markets and programs have not really had an impact. So I'll come to you, Heidi, on that one with the work that you're doing at TetraTech with monitoring, evaluation, and post-program kind of support to evaluate. What are your thoughts on making philanthropy and CSR more effective?
Great, thank you for that. So again, just to speak to the spring program that I'm sort of representing today, it was a business accelerator over 5 years that worked with 75 businesses in East Africa and South Asia. And it was complicated because it was a business accelerator, but it was also had developmental goals of impacting adolescent girls' lives. And so I think there is that sort of tension between obviously engaging with the private sector and working with and through businesses, but also at the end of the day, trying to reach scale and impact, right? Trying to reach, at least 200,000 girls and impact their lives. And I think one of the things that would be really good in terms of the way the program worked and for others is for foundations and trusts and developmental organizations to lay out their theory of change, right? To be very clear from the beginning, what are they trying to achieve? I think also engaging with and through markets, I think is really key. So not creating a sort of diversification or a tension. And then I think also thinking about the ambitions when you lay that out. So there's this classic question of breadth versus depth, right? So is it working through businesses to reach a large scale of in this case, girls, but whoever your target is, or is it more about the depth? So what is the deeper impact? And I think those discussions have to be had at the beginning to really understand, because I think businesses can do both. They can reach at scale or they can have deeper impact. But I guess you just have to figure where the focus is of the particular organization or trust or foundation.
I'll plug Ashish you into this one, because with the kind of work that Shell Foundation has been doing, and also the kind and bringing in kind of different structures, different markets. I mean, from experience of working with Shell Foundation on the Powered program in India, we saw that there were already multiple initiatives which were on the ground, and then extending to programs that you guys are running in Africa, but also at the same time working directly with your partners, which are effectively startups. So there are different structures that operate within Shell Foundation where it kind of working with your partners. So on the point of making it effective and creating that impact, as well as at the same time creating social good at scale, your views from an experience standpoint.
Yeah, I think what we have been trying to, if I have to sort of simplify and make it sort of digestible for the broad audience here, I think there are 2-3 sets of activities that we do. First is direct venture building early stage catalytic capital for early stage entrepreneurs in the sectors that we focus on, which is renewables, energy access, agriculture, ag energy, and mobility. So one part of our work is purely driven towards providing that sort of seed stage capital, innovate that you can de-risk their models. to a stage where they can attract commercial capital. So, like initially, you can say the value of that, and our success means that they have raised like Series A, Series B, commercial or impact capital, and we are really obsessed with scale. So we really want to get them to a stage where they are kind of becoming market pioneers, and we have a number of examples in our portfolio from our track record. That is one sort of area of activity, like which is in our DNA. We are very hands-on with our portfolio ventures. We are helping them in all sorts of ways beyond in the more than money approach. So it's just like in their fundraising, in their marketing, in their operational challenge, so trying to support where we can as like true venture builders. The other set of activities we do is around sort of blended finance models. So all of you would be knowing innovative, financing mechanisms. So how catalytic capital can play a role in sort of, any sort of we call access to finance continuum. So within that, be it sort of some sort of guarantees or credit enhancement. So we recently did a big guarantee with Rabo Foundation and IKEA Foundation together for a opportunity to do pari passu 50% guarantee, which is being unlocked by DFC, US DFC, for ag lenders in India, which will eventually go lending to FPOs or ag enterprises in India. And so that's just an example of guarantee. Then we have helped set up a number of funds, vehicles, where we have taken again like a first loss position or like junior tranche, which has helped attract MES and senior level capital from other sort of DFIs and impact investors, which is again like we started doing blended finance before it became sort of that sort of mainstream now in a way. And we will continue to do that. We are kind of supporting a number of forward-looking market instruments or financial intermediaries, which can drive new ways of catalyzing capital, be it distributor financing on one side and energy access, to impact monetization of gender and health credits, on the other in our sectors. And the third set of activities I would say is focused around, as some of the other panelists here touched on, in the ecosystem building realm. For ecosystem building, just to complement the first point I mentioned around venture building, we do believe not to just support the ventures we have in our portfolio, but the entire sector. And the way we do it is by trying to help create industry associations kind of organizations. So, if you are familiar with GOGLA, Global Off-Grid Lighting Association, or, AMDA, Africa Mini Grid Developer Association, and we have a number of those. We are also creating in-country market accelerators, which is helping drive the entire sector voice and bring that private sector approach to the thinking and policy making and others. So a number of initiatives around our market accelerator programs. And there's another program in India which is called, which is part of the Powered initiative that Ajay mentioned, was around Powering Livelihood program, which is implemented by Wilgrow and CEW. The unique thing they're trying to do is combine a pure startup accelerator approach along with a market accelerator, where they're working with the government ministries as well for potential policy interventions, which those favorable policies can drive the entire sector of productive use. So we hadn't seen that sort of package together when we have looked at previously how startup accelerators have worked. So, I mean, that was just a flavor of like, three different sets of activities we do. And there are a number of cross-cutting areas like around gender, around climate work that I do, which touches upon all these, three sets I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, I'll pause there, and I can also paint a picture of like the different spectrum of different types of CSR activities or corporate interventions that we have seen, but maybe I can park that for later.
Great. No. Thank you so much, laying that perspective with examples or cases of the work that Shell Foundation itself has been doing. Arielle, I'll come back to you on the same question, just kind of extending it. with the kind of partners, because as Intellecap, yes, Sankalp, but also as the Intellecap advisors, you do engage with partners and help them kind of create those structures and providing the consulting and framework. So if you would want to kind of add to some of the points that Ashish made.
Yeah, and I see there's also some questions in the chat coming in sort of on the strategy question, right? And I think it's really important for either, whether it's the philanthropic institution or the CSR entity, to really understand its strategy, to Ashish's earlier point. I do think there are models that do both, right? They're still driving the objectives of the corporate entity via supporting, and maybe I'll just give an example here of one that I think can sort of elucidate that better maybe than I can talk about it practically. So there's a fairly high-end hotel chain here in Nairobi, and part of their CSR activity is actually building capacity and livelihoods training in the hospitality sector. Right? So they are actually running, their CSR initiative is running a training and livelihoods capacity for underemployed youth and young people. So you can understand, right, the connection here. They are a hotel industry. They are putting their CSR money to not only provide livelihood trainings and opportunities for anyone, but they are simultaneously creating a pipeline of young people who now all of a sudden can actually be employed by them and provide their visitors and the people who are staying there with a far superior experience because of the caliber at which these people are trained, right? So I think there are models in which these CSR initiatives can be and should be tied to the sector, because I think that increases accountability. I think it actually increases effectiveness of their solutions to actually be integrated with their own business models, right? I mean, the incentive is far higher for this hotel chain to hire people, their own graduates, but they're also building the industry, they're also building livelihoods, they're also building skills, and that can't be discounted, right? But strategically, it really makes sense for them. So I do think it is possible. I think corporations have to get a bit creative in what that might look like, and that will look different for every corporation. So it really depends on what they're trying to achieve, and really what their sector is. But I mean, I think there's numerous ways if people are willing to think a little bit creatively about it, and it's really thinking along their value chains, along their supply chains. Whether it's talent, whether it's building capacity, whether it's hiring more women, whether it's engaging more women in supply chains. I mean, there's endless impact that corporations can create. I mean, it's sort of really up to the corporation how they want to tap into that, so that it beefs up their own business. I mean, why not? It's a win-win if you do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have, so me and colleagues have been here in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania for past few weeks, and a lot of folks that we have been meeting with, especially talking from a digital standpoint, there's a huge skill gap that everyone talks about, but it makes a lot of sense when you kind of back work, and if there is CSR money that can be put to good use where you're training people who you can absorb, it's cyclical, but at the same time, it's so strategic, and it makes a lot of sense. So thank you for bringing that out. And like you said, I think this panel has been kind of really invigorating, because there are a lot of people who are already posting questions, not even waiting for the panel to get over, which is good. So Janice, I'll come to you with the next question. How can one strategize or plan to make CSR and philanthropy to be more sustainable? And I think this is a word which is used a lot, abused a lot, and whatnot. But if you were to really kind of look at it of making it impactful as well as financially sustainable, what are your views and thoughts on that?
So I think there's been a golden thread through most of the conversations that have been happening here, and it relates to embedding the social innovation and social impact into strategy. And one needs to understand that everything that a company does has a flow-on effect, either from their customers, employees, to their communities, and to the rest of the environment. And to illustrate this, I could give you an example of an entity that we invested in a few years ago. It was an agricultural business, a farm, located in an area which is known as being one of the poorest regions in South Africa. And what it did is, it had the funding to do all its operations in the manner that it needs to, but the surrounding, small scale farmers were struggling. So it identified a few farmers around this farm. So we're calling it an anchor farm, and the other surrounding farms, we're calling them a hub and spoke. So what they would do is they'll provide inputs and knowledge to these small scale farmers and provide an opportunity for those small scale farmers to produce or provide their outputs of agriculture. So they'll take offtake agreements with those farmers. But what it does at the end of the day is, even after this farm is to leave or the investor is to leave, you have farmers who've been upskilled, which talks to sustainability, that even though this company is not there anymore, the activities that have been spearheaded and cultivated with that original company continue. And that's the best way I can answer that question using an example.
And Heidi, coming to you on that one.
Yeah, I think that was great, Janice. And just to sort of build on your point a little bit, I think again, one of the things we found in Spring was that obviously as a business accelerator working with 75 businesses come to the business accelerator for different reasons, right? Some of it is, as she said, it's about support and resource as well. But I think what we found worked best was the sort of businesses that had an altruistic aspect to them. I think when they came, and it was sort of a win-win, it came together where they were looking for support, but also with a clear agenda of being involved in their communities and development and that sort of thing. And I think working with them to cultivate that is very, very important. So obviously you want the business to thrive and gain revenue, but also cultivating and nurturing that altruistic aspect as well. One of the ways they did that was worked with them on human-centered design. So the idea was that they could go through the process of properly targeting their clients and really understanding them and how to service them. The Spring program ended in September 2019 after 5 years, and we went back in January 2021, and we found that 60% of the businesses are still targeting girls, adolescent girls, as their end users. Maybe not exclusively, but also part of their market. So I think that also speaks to the sustainability aspect of it as well.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Heidi and Janice. With that, I'll come to the last planned question that I have for the group, and then we can dive into probably a few questions that the audience has posted out there. So we have Ashish, Arielle, and Heidi, all three of you representing organizations which works in Africa, but also in other markets. So coming to the last point, which is more to do with lessons learned and which can be exchanged across countries and sectors for developing and testing successful models. If you can go with you, Arielle, first on this one.
Sure, and I think the successful models that we've seen are ones in where the strategy goes beyond money, right? And again, I think in terms of the folks that we've worked with and engaged with, it's CSR entities and philanthropic entities that are looking to support those early stage innovations or early stage entrepreneurs. And people sort of talk about the missing middle, but I think particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, there's sort of a missing start, like how for entrepreneurs to get the really early stage funding. But money is not everything. And I think that's what's really, really important to keep in mind. And that's really where we've seen success happening, where organizations are supporting capacity, they're supporting talent, they're supporting, skills, they're supporting ecosystems, right? I mean, there's a lot to be said. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I think it takes an ecosystem to raise an entrepreneur and a healthy entrepreneur and healthy innovation. And I think, CSR activities that are thinking a little bit broadly other than, how can we just give some cash, but are really in it for the long run, are really in it to support the innovators and entrepreneurs in sort of a long-term relationship and supporting them beyond just money. How can they provide networks? How can they provide expertise? How can they help build those skills? Those are the things that I've really seen for those CSR initiatives that have been successful.
Just addressing a couple of fellow panelists' questions here, but no, I come to you with the same question, Ashish. Lessons learned, and what have you successfully seen, kind of migrating from one market to other, and having the impact as well.
I think over time we have gradually realized the need for both bringing together the voice of more commercial and impact investors as early as possible into the kind of ventures or interventions we are supporting. So, like over the years, we learned that soon as we are evaluating an opportunity ourselves, in let's say if it's a kind of technology or business model innovation, and an entrepreneur with an MVP trying to build market traction, and our grant capital going into that, at that very stage, it's very valuable to have the voice of at the later stage investor brought in to say that what they would like to see in a year's time from this venture, so that it kind of gets attractive for them. So be it in terms of things like unit economics, or seeing the commercial viability, the sales, or any of the other sort of business matrix. So we learned that over time. We originally, when we started, we were not that market based solutions, but we adopted that approach almost 15 years ago. But now we are very obsessed about driving, getting some of the financial matrix right through our intervention, and getting it attractive enough for the follow-on investment to happen, because that is our success model. So that's one of the key lessons learned. And secondly, in terms of ecosystem building, we have realized that the increasing role of blended finance, it will only grow, and we are trying new mechanisms to unlock that. We are trying new sort of leveraging anything from fintech solutions out there, so AI, machine learning, how that could play a role in sort of, let's say, enhance consumer credit scoring, risk analytics, which are especially lacking when you look at sort of low income sort of targeted solutions, where there's very hard to find that level of granularity in terms of risk analytics. And that applies to across the sectors. It's not just for energy, renewables, but also for any other types of solution you may be looking in, be it in healthcare or ed tech and others. So I think driving those types of innovations and proving those models at early stage can have a wide-ranging benefit.
And Heidi, your comments on this one?
Yeah, I think just a sort of question, maybe an answer and a question for the group. But I think also one of the things that we found with Spring was actually the size of the business. So a very early startup that perhaps had just launched or hadn't quite gone to market wasn't going to really, it might be innovative, but it might not reach numbers. And I think then again, perhaps a company with trying to do an altruistic thing, but very big, becomes immobile, or becomes a sort of project of one person in the company, and it kind of fails. So it's sort of I don't know if you know the Goldilocks principle, like not too small, not too big, the right size, and finding that kind of SME or business to engage with, which is got a product in the market or just about to launch, and really helping them, provide them with support in order for them to scale up. I think that would be a good recommendation.
Great, thank you so much for that, Heidi, Arielle, and Ashish. Maybe we'll just take one question from the ones that are posted out here. There's the last one from Gordon, and Gordon is from TetraTech. Okay, should CSR initiatives focus on programs or areas related directly to their own corporate sector, or should they have a wider, more generic outlook? I think Arielle did touch upon it, but Janice, if I can come to you with this one.
Thanks, AJ. So I've seen both principles being used, but the one that I've seen being more effective is one where an entity concentrates on the areas in which they are already, establishing, or they're already their business and products are already establishing. So, for example, if you take on a particular SDG and say, I'm going to concentrate on water or I'm going to concentrate on education, it is usually very helpful to be specific, and it then makes it easier to integrate it into your strategy. And an example of this would be a small SME that I worked with last year, where they went to the production of honey, and their CSR was involved in capacitating people in the rural areas by supplying them with the knowledge of how to build the hives and how to produce and harvest honey, for which they would then offtake. So it then makes it easier to be more impactful, because you're working in a field, in an area that you are already establishing, and you can make a great impact in terms of the knowledge that you'll transfer. So that's the education, you're creating jobs, and definitely embedding a great ecosystem within that environment.
Great. Thank you so much, Janice, for those closing comments of sorts. But wonderful chatting with all four of you, Arielle, Ashish, Heidi, and Janice. And I'm sure that given the kind of questions that also came up on the chat window, people were engaged and they really liked the conversation. So thank you for the wonderful chat early in the morning. And with that, I'd like to close this panel and pass it over back to our moderator and MC, Jagrati. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all the speakers. I think they're like people are clapping hands and showing thumbs up and all. Lovely session. Thank you so much to the speakers for joining in. And we'll move on to the next talk, that is by Bruce. So I'll just be back. I'll get him on the stage. Okay. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.